Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We missed you. I hope you feel the same, but we are here and ready to go once again with the JWJ podcast. Again, it is your boy James, and I'm here with my dude, my best friend, my man, my ace, the shooter on the wing, Mr. Shane. How you doing this evening, brother?
I'm kicking, but not high.
Yeah, look, it's been some trying few days, right? We struggling here. I'm so happy. I will say I'm very satisfied that I actually got my table clamp back from the mic company. They sent it pretty quickly. I wasn't supposed to get it until tomorrow, and it came like 2 days ago. So I'm thankful for that. But of course, in the meantime, we've definitely been having some other obstacles going on along the way. I know over there you kind of, battling a little bit of a cough you got going on over there, right?
Yeah, man. I got a pretty nasty cough going on, man. It's been dogging me ever since I'd say probably Saturday, and it seems like it's getting worse. So I'm just trying to get through this and see where I'm at.
You just hit him with that it sucks. I hate it for you. But the selfish part of me will say better you than me. Like, I hate it, but we'll call it teamwork, right?
That's what I get for playing a tennis tournament in 1,000,000-degree heat.
Yeah, I feel you, man. It's almost like I was there supporting, because Saturday wasn't great for me either. I think I spent most of the day in the bed, man. I was feeling awful. I think I might have lost some weight that day, and not willingly. But either way, I mean, we here, right? We here, we're good, and I feel like we have some pretty solid topics that we gonna knock off today, starting with we haven't had a chance to recap the draft. We both gave our opinions last week about what we thought would happen, and I feel like, for what it's worth, we were somewhat spot on. I mean, we did have a pretty big surprise at the top, but outside of that, I feel like we were doing very well with our predictions from last Thursday night.
I think we nailed it, man. I thought we did pretty well. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily predicted Ben Carroll going number one, but I did say that there could be some shakeups up there. Chet didn't fall, but we did get a shakeup with the number one and number three picks. So for the most part, I think we nailed it. I think we did pretty well to predict what we did. And now with the big move at the top, that gives us something to talk about, because I think everybody had Jabari Smith going number one.
Totally guilty. I mean, you guys go back and listen to the last episode. I absolutely had Jabari going number one to Orlando. I felt like he was the one that would fit in the best with them right now. But I think that, there's this ongoing debate when it comes to the NBA draft, and when it comes to, players, teams, and what have you. There's always this ongoing debate of, do you select the best player overall, or do you select the player that you think will fit your team the best at the time? And I think that's what it came down to. I do feel like, for what it's worth, both Boncaro and Jabari, I think that both of them would probably be interchangeable with those franchises. But I just really had something in my gut that was telling me that Jabari was going number one. And remember, I told you guys a few episodes ago, I'll say it now because I said I would always say it if it's necessary. I was wrong. I thought Jabari was going number one, and he didn't. So, I mean, he did still go top three, which we both did predict that the top three would remain, consisting of those three guys. Hey, we got Chet right. We knew Chet was going to OKC, but I definitely expected Jabari to go to the top, but I think that he'll probably fit in Houston just as well.
You could make the argument. I mean, given where he landed, I mean, you could argue he's probably a better fit. You could argue he's a better fit for Houston than he would have been for Orlando. I mean,
True.
Orlando kind of had some had some guys that can do some stuff. They're getting Jonathan Isaac back. I mean, getting Bankero, who's not the shooter that Jabari Smith is, but he does a lot of different things well. His versatility should help them. I think with Jabari, pairing a shooting big with some athleticism, pairing him with some dynamic, explosive guards, like I think Houston really got it right. I mean, for them to draft him there in Orlando, kind of going with Bankero, I think. I don't know. I mean, you mentioned like, taking the best players available, that kind of thing. And I mean, when you're terrible like those teams are, you can kind of roll the dice and shake things up a little bit. And I mean, Paolo's a really good player. I think he'll be a stud in Orlando, but Jabari, I think that's the real move that I think moves the needle for Houston. I think that might actually accelerate the rebuild they're on. Not saying they'll be a playoff team within like 2 years, but they built things the right way. Getting Jabari Smith to pair with Jalen Green, Kevin Porter, those dudes down there, like I think that's the partnership you want. Like with Orlando, I think there's still some question marks, but I think though that swap, definitely works out in Houston's favor for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, kind of on what you're saying, it's like if you're that team that is going to end up at the top of the draft regularly, then it's very rare that one pick is going to turn you around right away. So I absolutely agree with you there when you talk about Jabari in Houston. I think that's going to work out very well for them because they're already on the up and up. I mean, even though Houston, we can't even really say they underperformed, but I'll go ahead and use that anyway. But even in that idea, Jalen Green showed out. So I think that pairing somebody like Jabari alongside him, they're going to be a problem. I think that's going to be one of those young uprising teams that are going to they're going to surprise somebody. Like I see an up and up from them almost similar to what we've seen over the last few years in Memphis. I think that they could be that kind of team where you get a couple more pieces around those guys and they could definitely be a problem in the near future.
So how many wins? They won 20 games last year. So you think they bump it up to 22 this year, or you think it's probably going to be around 20 again?
No. You know what? I'm going to be very hopeful, and I'm gonna go on record, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna give them 26.
26. I think that's a little high.
I'm gonna give them 26.
I think I may give them. You might be on to something. I'm gonna say 20. I'm gonna say 24 wins.
Okay. I'm gonna give them. Look, so we put the over under at what, 25. I'm sticking with 26. I think they'll make it at 26. Now one team in this draft that we don't have to worry about predicting wins about, because we'll both win, as long as we guess fewer than 10, is those that team over there in Sacramento that shall remain nameless, but as a Laker fan, I constantly refer to them as the Queens. We can look at what they did, and we can go back to past draft tradition. And based off the fact that they did select Keegan Murray, who I do recall on the last episode, I do believe I said that they would take Keegan Murray, but what that does is that actually low-key sets up Jaden Ivey of the Detroit Pistons for imminent success, because there's been quite a few notable players that have been passed up by Sacramento that have gone on to greatness. So shout out to you in advance, Mr. Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, absolutely, man. They Sacramento, like we both sat there. I think I kind of leaned more Ivy. I think you went with Keegan Murray. I don't know if we agreed on Keegan Murray, but I think I said something like I wouldn't be surprised if Jaden Ivey was there.
Yeah, the big thing for me was that I said that at the time Sacramento is so guard heavy right now that I believe they would go with a wing or a big, and that's why I went with Keegan.
Yeah, and with Sacramento, I think the problem with this, and this is the vibe I get, and I think you probably follow me on this. Even though we agree that Keegan Murray was probably the smart pick there, it feels like a damned if you do and damned if you don't situation. Like I feel
Definitely.
like even though picking Keegan Murray was probably the right move, they probably didn't pick the best prospect available right then. Like if they
Agreed.
were going best prospect, they would have went with Jaden Ivey. But
Agreed.
I think they kind of wanted a little bit more of an adult in the room. And I mean, Keegan Murray is like I think 22-year-old sophomore.
Right.
So I mean, getting a guy that's 22 instead of however old Jaden Ivey is, 19 or whatever. I mean, they needed a guy like Keegan Murray, so he fits a positional need. But they may have somehow whiffed on getting the guy that was probably more talented.
Yeah.
So they'll probably even if Keegan Murray pans out and is a solid player for them, if Jaden Ivey overperforms that and becomes the stud that everybody thinks he'll be, Sacramento is still going to come up on the losing end of this.
Oh yeah, Sacramento will be Sacramento, and that's it. If nothing else, from that interaction between the fourth and the fifth pick, something else that's definitely worth mentioning, just on that whole feel good, more than a game moment, was seeing Jaden Ivey actually get his name called, knowing that his mom actually played for the Detroit Shock back in the day. That was a huge moment. And something else that I
Full
saw,
circle.
yeah, so something else that I saw, I don't know if you caught this on social media, but not too long after he was drafted, Barry Sanders actually tweeted out and welcomed Jaden Ivey to Detroit. And he threw out this really random fact. He was like, "Hey man, I knew your grandfather." And he said, if he was like, your grandfather would be so proud of you right now, and this and that, like literally shouted out the dude's granddad while he's welcoming him to Detroit, and even posted this in a tweet with a picture of Jaden's grandfather. So I'm like, like just the welcome to the city. I'm like, it was a perfect moment for him. I mean, I agree with you that he probably should have gone before Keegan just off pure talent, but I think Jaden Ivey ending up in Detroit is a perfect scenario for him overall.
Yeah, and Detroit needs something to be excited about, man. They've been a poverty franchise for a while now. I mean, they haven't been good. I mean, probably since what, like 2007. I think they made the playoffs since then, but I think they were a first round exit, whatever
Right.
year it was. So they need something to get excited about. They've done some good things in the draft, and they've made some trades and things like that. So I like what Detroit's doing. I think you need somebody to get excited about. Jaden Ivey is definitely that guy, and that welcome I think is a good place to start. You get some good vibes going to try and get the team turned in the right direction when they play at Little Caesars Arena. Hot and ready, baby, hot and ready. And for $5.
And for only $5. Definitely, absolutely.
Detroit trying to be extra most bestest next season.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, all right. So let's just go quickly. If we could knock out, because okay, so we've established, some teams that we feel like did it the right way. Like Detroit definitely got a steal in, Jaden Ivey, even though, I mean, you asked me this before we got on, is it considered a steal if he goes, in the top four, top five? I still kind of feel like it is, given the fact when I think about steal, I think about the fact that he still could have gone higher than he did. So from that standpoint, I do kind of feel like Jaden Ivey is going to go down as a steal of the draft. It's almost like if you think back to the whole, Greg Oden and Kevin Durant. It's like, to me, Kevin Durant was still a steal of that draft because, of course, we don't know what the future holds, but then we saw how it ended up. So, from that standpoint, I do believe that Jaden Ivey has the ability to be a quote unquote steal of this draft. But off the top of your head, bro, is there anybody else that just immediately comes to mind that you think like, is there anybody else that a team just really, really lucked up on?
I think just thinking about it, I mean, I think San Antonio did pretty well. I mean, they got Jeff Sochan, they got Malachi Branham, they got Blake Wesley. I thought those were three good picks. I thought they did really well in the draft. Detroit getting Ivy and Jalen Duran, I think that's really nice for them as well. And then, I mean, OKC, I would say that they were a winner for me. I mean, they got Chet, they got Jalen Williams, and they got Jalen Williams.
You the
So yeah,
Spider-Man meme.
Spider-Man meme all day. And they got Usman Jang. So I think OKC did pretty well considering the amount of picks that they have over the next few years. And I feel like they picked some solid guys. Like they made some solid acquisitions. So I like what those teams did. I think I think Ivy was probably the one where I'm like, okay, like they did pretty well there, but also um just in terms of maybe somebody that did really well, and I may be a little bit biased. I think Dallas did pretty well to get Jaden Hardy at 37, buying their way into the second round. Like before Jalen Hardy went to before he went to the G League to play for the Ignite. Like, I mean, this dude was being talked about as a lottery pick. And I mean, he played in the G League, and he didn't put up the shooting numbers necessarily, but I mean, he still played decent. So I mean, to see him fall into the second round for Dallas to go in and snag up a guy that was a potential top five pick, like, I mean, he still needs some seasoning, but I mean, you
Yeah.
could look up and Hardy could be one of the top players from this draft as a second round pick. And I mean, look at Jalen Brunson. He was 33rd for Dallas back in 18, in the,
Right.
in the Luka draft. So I mean, you can find some gems there. I mean, Jalen Brunson was a proven winning two-time national champion, player of the year, all that. So
Right.
I think Jaden Hardy, I think he's that guy that can come in and eventually be a contributor. I mean, he may even get a shot this year or next season. I mean, I think they really got a steal there for him at 37. That's a major bargain.
Yeah. I think a couple of other names that I feel need to get thrown in there. We kind of both agreed that he was gonna go around where he did, but I think he could help just given the youth factor. Agbaji, Oche Agbaji went at 14 to Cleveland. I think that could really work out for them. I mean, of course, they already have Darius Garland, they have Colin Sexton. I think that with the type of scheme that Cleveland wants with as far as their offense, I think that he helps tremendously. Another one that I think was not necessarily unexpected, but I think can definitely be helpful. And we'll get into why, given some other things that have happened just as recently as today. Number 16, AJ Griffin going to Atlanta. I think that AJ Griffin could be somebody that could step in probably right away and help Atlanta, because one of the places where Atlanta was showing to be somewhat deficient was, in that wing area. So I think that AJ Griffin could really, really do something big for them. And the next one, the last one that I want to mention is it's everyone is going to say there's no such thing as, having too much of a good thing. And I think that was clearly recognized in Oakland with the 28th pick when Golden State took Patrick Baldwin Jr. I think that the type of game that he plays, you already have a youngster in Jordan Poole. You guys basically just drafted a young Jordan Poole. And I think that Baldwin Jr., given, they give him a little bit of time just to get acclimated to the pace of the NBA game, I think he's going to be just as dangerous as every one of those other shooters that's on that Golden State roster right now. If Jordan Poole is a Splash cousin, then they just drafted the Splash nephew. I think that they just keep extending the longevity, and he's going to be just as much of a problem eventually as the rest of them are in Golden State.
Yeah, I like that pick for them. I like Baldwin a lot. I going off what you said about AJ Griffin, like I really like him in Atlanta. I think they've they've been looking for some wing stuff for a while. I mean, Kevin Herter's been up and down. They already traded away Cam Reddish. Like, DeAndre Hunter is kind of there, but I think he's one guy that you could look at that feels like a can't miss kind of guy. Like he's going to be there and be a guy that can contribute from day one. I think he's got the pedigree. Adrian Griffin played in the league forever. So, I mean, I like the pedigree. I like that he's with a team that he can possibly get an opportunity right away. I think he's going to pay dividends there. So I agree with what you just said with those guys.
Yeah, man. Now, the draft was one thing in itself, and granted we haven't been able to chat it up in a minute. I mean, it's life gets the best of us. We've both been pretty busy, but the draft was one thing. But even before the draft, and now that we're right here on the eve of free agency opening up, another big thing that of course is necessary to discuss at this time is player movement. And there's already been quite a few interesting things that have happened. Before we get into players with their options and this and that, I kind of feel like I want to touch on some of the trades that have already been agreed to. I think I want to jump on the trades before I jump on the player options, only because I think those player options will probably carry us into our next episode as well, because I think that that's going to be going on a lot more. First thing we're going to do, I actually want to jump in and discuss the movement with your squad, man, because at least one of our teams has to be doing something that actually makes sense, and kudos to you guys for actually doing something that's worth a damn. For those of you that aren't aware, I guess I'll go ahead and just quickly just graze the surface, and I'll let my man pick it up. What was this? It's probably been almost 2 weeks ago when the trade was first announced, but of course it couldn't be official at the time. Houston agreed to send one of their star front court players, Christian Wood, to Dallas in exchange for the number 26 pick in the draft this year, along with Boban Marjanovic, who, come on now, everybody's favorite player, even if he doesn't play. And if you know. Then you got, in addition with that, you got Sterling Brown, Trey Burke, and Marquise Chris. So immediately, I mean, of course, I'll let you elaborate, bro. I know this is your squad, so I'm gonna let you have your time. But just off the top, from an outsider watching, I mean, huge move for Dallas. I mean, this strengthens their front court. I mean, front court defense was something that was already there, but it can always use the help. So, I mean, this is a big move for Dallas, and I think it's only going to get stronger moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Wood, I mean, he actually, there's a bit of a connection to Christian Wood. He played summer league a couple different times with Dallas. So they're familiar with his game and his progression. So, he's 6'10", 6'11", puts the ball on the floor, can shoot perimeter. He dunks a lot. He's a rim roller. He can block shots just based on his length. I think he has like a 7'1" or something wingspan. So a lengthy guy.
Like a 7'2". I think.
Yeah, and he's a guy that can do a lot of things at his size. I mean, he's kind of like Kristaps Porzingis in a way, but he's got a little bit better drive game. He's got a little bit more as far as being a rim roller for the Mavericks. So I think he's an upgrade at that position, whether he's playing the 4 or the 5. If he's playing the 5, I could definitely see him in a closing lineup because they used a lot of they had Brunson or Dinwiddie, whoever, with Luka. Bullock would be out there, Finney Smith at the 4, and then you slot him in. I mean, they could go big at the end of games. They could go small at the end of games. I mean, they have a lot of dynamic things there. I mean, they needed somebody with Christian Wood's skill set, a guy that can put the ball on the floor at 6'11". I mean, Maxi Kleber can put the ball on the floor. He just doesn't. He's not decisive off the dribble. I mean, you've seen Kleber play. I mean, he's a guy that can put it on the floor pretty well at 6'10", but he's not a guy that's comfortable going all the way to the cup and trying to dunk on you off the bounce. He's more of a behind the defense cutter kind of guy. So having a guy that can make a play off the pick and pop, a guy that can attack closeouts at that size and do some things. I mean, that's going to be huge for Dallas. And I mean, giving Luka a talented, dynamic pick and roll partner. I mean, no knock on Dwight Powell, but he was pretty much unplayable in the playoffs. We hit matchups that he couldn't really stay on the court. And I mean, teams took away the lob threat. He doesn't, even though he came into the league as a guy with some stretch potential, that was never something that Dwight really made a staple in his game. And I mean, he got played off the floor. Defensively, just too small, not physical enough. And even though he's mobile, you kind of need more than that, especially when you go against the Goberts and the Jokic's and even Kevon Looney, who kind of bullied him inside in the minutes he had. I think they needed something. I don't know if Wood necessarily answers all those questions. I think Dallas is still probably looking to add some stuff, but man, you add a guy that I think he averaged 20 and 10 a couple years ago, 17 and 10 last year.
Right.
So I mean, and he shoots 39, 40% from 3 at 6'11". So, I think we're used to guys around that size. At least one guy that retired a few years ago that could shoot around 40% from 3.
I don't want to talk about it.
So I mean, I like the addition. I think he's going to add a lot to the offense, and I think just his length will give us something defensively, even though people aren't necessarily high on his defense right now.
No, and I mean those kind of things will come around. I think it'll be fine. I mean, and just like you said, I feel like there's a lot of teams in the league that are gonna have to understand that like you need that power in the front court. You need some sort of presence in the front court to make things happen. And another team that tried to do something like that with adding some power, at least to the swing position, Portland. So Portland makes a move and actually, sends off, what was it? I think 3 picks, including the number 36 this year, just last week, in order to receive Jeremy Grant out of Detroit, which again, I think is a big move for them. But just like you were saying with Dallas, as far as like, they're probably not done, there's going to have to be other moves to be made. If this is the kind of move that is expected to be a final move for for Portland, I'm pointing fingers and laughing. And you already know me, as much as I love my Lakers, there are certain players outside of the realm that I'm big fans of. Everybody knows how big of a fan I am of Ja Morant in Memphis. Everybody knows how big of a fan I am of Dame Lillard in Portland. And being so comfortable and wanting to be that loyal player to your franchise, I get it. But bringing in a Jeremy Grant, it is a glimmer of hope. At the same time, if this is the only glimmer that you're bringing, I'm in no hurry to reach for my sunglasses. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think it's a move in the right direction. Portland has needed quality wing play, especially across the guys that could play the 3 and the 4. Like, I mean, they did okay with Robert Covington, but I mean, that wasn't enough. I think Jeremy Grant being the player he is, it's a good pickup for them. A guy that's young and hungry and stepped into a bigger role with Detroit. So like you said, I like it in terms of, um, it's a good move in the right direction for a position of need. But they have to get healthy, number one, with the guys they already have, and then maybe make some more moves and make some acquisitions. I still don't think this move necessarily makes them, puts them back to kind of where they where they were kind of that dangerous team to, possibly pull an upset or something in the West. I don't think it necessarily moves the needle for them there. They'll be better than they were last year, but
right.
I think with the West just getting stronger, Denver's going to be back healthy. Dallas is going to be there. The Lakers are there. We still got to see what they're going to do. Like,
yeah, it's all health issues in LA, but yeah, we'll get to that.
And I mean, Memphis is there. Like, Golden State is there. Like, there's so many teams there. I think Portland is just kind of, they're still trying to figure out what they got with Chauncey Billups. Like, they're trying to be more defensive. So Jeremy Grant will help them there.
And you mentioned and you mentioned Memphis. I mean, I feel like we got to throw in there too. They snuck around and picked up Danny Green.
That big pickup for them. I mean, he's another guy with a lot of experience, which as a young team, I think they needed.
Yeah, his offense comes off the run and gun. That's what I'm excited to see. I mean, that's the kind of offense that he thrives in. If you think about everywhere else he's been, you look at Toronto, you look at LA, you look at San Antonio, all these other places that he's been, that's the kind of game that he plays. He spots up, he gets in position, he's ready. And I think that Memphis is a huge place. I think Memphis is a big spot where he can just continue to do that and really be effective for his team.
And they add a player that can readily fit into their philosophy. They were one of the best defensive teams in basketball last year.
Yeah.
And they add a guy who is one of the, maybe not now, but he has been one of the premier 3-and-D players out there. So adding another shooter and adding another defender and with experience, I think that's a shrewd move for them.
Yeah,
for sure.
you said that veteran experience. I was going to throw that in there. It's definitely something that's going to help a team like Memphis, because you have leadership, but there's a big difference between leadership and veteran leadership. And bringing in a guy like Danny Green is going to be big for them. I definitely think it'll help them out a lot. We have a couple of other moves that have already been agreed to. We'll get to the lesser of the two, because I feel like this last one that we're going to mention is probably the bombshell of the week. First off, we had the move between Washington and Denver. So Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is on the move again, which you feel is like the millionth move for him until you think about who's actually being shipped out with him. We have so Washington is going to be picking up Monte Morris and Will Barton from Denver, which I feel like I've already been hearing that there's plans to buy Will Barton out. I mean, we can get to that. I'm not 100% sure on that. But in return, Denver will be picking up KCP, and they'll also be picking up Ish Smith, who, Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, I think he's played for about 29 NBA teams so far, something like that.
I'm sure he's probably like had some type of talk with all 30 at this point. He's had a couple where he's played for them multiple times, but we talked about it before the pod. This will be his 13th team in his career. I think that's a new record.
And 15th move. This will be
15th move, 13 different teams. Like, we talk about like guys getting traded and how it's a business.
Man,
I'm pretty sure he's like, look, I'm gonna like y'all. I don't even have an apartment. Like, I'm just chilling at the Super 8 real quick, like,
for real,
because I could be on the move like tomorrow. Like, I think I would love to know like guys like him and guys that have just played everywhere, like 13 teams, 15 moves. And I mean, like he's been everywhere. It's
Oh
insane.
man.
Like he's played for,
And it's not even just a one conference thing. He's been on both sides. I think the first three teams he played for were all in the West. And then after that, a majority were in the East. So he's been all over.
yeah. I mean, he's well traveled. I mean, there's other guys in the league that have played for a bunch of teams. Jeff Green comes to mind. I think he's on Denver.
Definitely. Definitely.
So I'm sure they can share plenty of travel stories between the two of them for sure. Uncle Jeff probably got a bunch of them. So
They'll
I'm
share.
ready to figure out who's gonna get moved next.
Look, they'll share houses like what was it Kuzma and Josh Hart. They'll just exchange houses.
They can just be roommates. Be like, look, if he just be roomies, man, because they're the most well traveled guys in the league, I think, at this point.
Oh man, look, and kudos, man. But just like you say, look, we're gonna come up with our own nickname right here tonight. We say that, of course, we understand the NBA is a business, and if that man ain't the epitome, look, Ish Smith's new nickname is Dollar Bill. That's we gonna call him Dollar Bill, because at the end of the day, that's what these teams are all about. And clearly, you are a pawn in the moment. So shout out to you, Ish, and congratulations to being moved around once every 6 months for the last 8-9 years. Shout out to you. But the I'm trying to be nice. I promise.
And I mean, and that's not. And I'm sure he may have even had a stretch where he wasn't even in the league at all. So it's like he probably was playing somewhere else and then came back and was getting passed around again. So
yeah, I think early on, I think it was after that Western Conference stretch. I think he was over in like Asia or something for at least a year. Like it's been all over. I mean, hey, shout out to World Travelers, man. Look, if I was good enough on the court to get to see multiple cities on a regular and get to travel the world, I ain't hating. I'm not mad at him. But
what I'm gonna say is, if anybody's listening to this that does documentaries or anything like that, Ish Smith would be a nice subject. I think y'all should hit him up and see about that. I'll plug myself. Hey Ish, if you want to bang out a book about this, about your journey in the league, holla at one of us, because I mean we'd love to have a chance to help you tell that story, because I think it's fascinating.
Look. Oh no, man. Don't holler at one of us, man. Holler at both of us, because we're gonna start up the production company. We're gonna write the book, and we're gonna produce the documentary. We got it on lock here, man. JWJ is going to expand to everything. Y'all be ready. Thank you for being here for the ground roots, the grassroots. Okay. We going to do it all. Just make sure y'all stay here. Now, one last trade, Shane, that I need to get into. And to me, honestly, this one is the biggest so far. We got to talk about what went down with Atlanta and San Antonio today. Now, this was major for a number of reasons. So, if you guys haven't heard yet, go check on ESPN, go check on NBA.com, whatever, because I feel like this was a move that we all kind of saw coming, but I think that once we saw the details, it's a little mind-blowing and not in the way that you would expect. So let me just break it down to you real quick. The Atlanta Hawks just boosted their roster tremendously. Recent All-Star DeJounte Murray is on his way to Atlanta, Georgia, to play alongside Trae Young. Now, in return, San Antonio will be picking up Danilo Gallinari, and both Shane and I can share our, love/horror stories with Gallo.
Absolutely.
So Gallo is on his way to San Antonio, along with one future draft swap and 3 first-round picks. 2 of those 3 picks are unprotected. Let me explain to you what that means. So typically, if you have a pick that's protected, let's say that I agreed to a trade with Shane, but my trade is going to be top 4 protected. What it means is that trade has to fall within a certain range, or that trade is not going to happen that year. There's going to be other accommodations that happen after the fact. With a trade being unprotected, with you getting an unprotected pick from someone, it means that no matter how good I do in that year, no matter how bad I do in that year, wherever my draft position falls that year, it belongs to you. So that is a big, big deal. It's not very often that you see a team willing to give up multiple unprotected picks. Now, this is huge for Atlanta, but Shane, we talked about it earlier. I'm sure you can agree. In my opinion, as dope as DeJounte Murray is, this move to me is actually a huge, huge win for San Antonio.
Yeah, and big reason is, I mean, they are offloading contracts. So I mean, they're probably looking, they're probably going to lose some more guys that are heavy lifters for them. I've heard Jakob Pertl being mentioned in a lot of things. They've shipping DeJounte is probably the start of a mass rebuild for San Antonio, and I think it's the sooner the better for them. They'll probably buy out Danilo Gallinari. I think Gallo could definitely help a contending team. But man, DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, I think that's an awesome. I think they complement each other's game so well because DeJounte's a big guard.
Definitely.
Can defend, do a lot of things. I mean, he could probably set things up and they could probably move Trae off the ball a little bit more. It would be interesting to see how that works with Trae playing off the ball more. But, they've been waiting for that backcourt mate. I mean, they thought it would be Kevin Huerter, who hasn't really panned out the way they thought. I mean, we were thinking this was like, Golden State of the East. I mean, you had your Curry starter kit with Trae Young. You had your Klay Thompson with my favorite nickname in the league, Red Velvet, Kevin Huerter. But to get DeJounte Murray, a guy who just made the All-Star game, like to pair with Trae Young, I think that kind of opens their window up a little more. I think they needed to get Trae a running mate, that with John Collins expected to not come back to Atlanta, to be probably shipped out. They got to get some more pieces, but I think adding a DeJounte Murray kind of pries open that window a little bit more. I mean, they were just in the Eastern Conference Finals, last year, right? So
yeah, just last season.
They went from being a team that looked like they were about to take the next step, and then they had a step back. Yeah. You could make the argument that as well as they played, some of it could have been a little bit fluky. I think people, a similar situation to compare that to, maybe Dallas this year. There was a lot of things that happened. Dallas wasn't expected to make the conference finals. They did. Dallas also made some making moves now that I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit. But, Atlanta, with the East being the way it is, you're going to get Brooklyn's in flux. We don't know how that team is going to look. Philly's going to be there. Milwaukee's going to get Chris Middleton back. Miami's there, like Boston. So there's plenty of room for them to kind of fit into that mix. DeJounte Murray is a bona fide stud. So I think Atlanta was good to get him. And now we need to see what other moves they make, because that'll determine if they can be a team that could possibly make another deep run in the playoffs or not.
Now, and I think, and while you talk about, everything that's going to be happening during the off season, we've gotten a lot of that already. Like the trades have been a big deal, but just in the last, 48 hours or so, we've gotten, major news throughout the league, but especially in the Eastern Conference. There were the big talks about Kyrie Irving not wanting to take his not wanting to pick up his player option, which, you know, he would have been making about what 36, 37 mil. You know, there were the big talks that he wasn't going to take that, and then he'd possibly take that you know, the 6 million, the vet minimum over in Los Angeles with the Lakers. And for what it's worth, I don't care what y'all say, you can hate me, I'm glad that he decided not to do it. Kyrie decided to go ahead and pick up his option and stay in Brooklyn, which, similar to quickly throwing it back across the country with Russell Westbrook picking up his option in LA, common sense. I mean, who's going to turn down that kind of money? A lot of these guys are going to say that they want to, you know, they're in it for the wins, they're in it for the game and this and that. You're not going to turn down that money. You're out of your mind if you do. So I will say, shout out to Kyrie for doing what you did. I'm glad you're not bringing it to LA, quite personally, because a constant notion is the fact that, you know, teams want to say that we're not paying you for what you've done. We're paying you for what we believe you can do. It's still a realistic notion that we're going to base it off of what you've done. And there's a reason that once Brooklyn turned Kyrie loose to go figure out his own sign and trade option, nobody was interested. There's a reason. There's a reason for that. So kudos to you, Kyrie, for finally wising up. Go get your money. Go get your money. And, you know, so Kyrie opts in. I think another really big one that I'm kind of laughing at, only because he's going, you know, to, even though it's in the same town, I'll call it the sister city, is John Wall. John Wall reaches a buyout with Houston. Almost immediately announces that he's going to be signing in LA, but, you know, with the lesser of the two teams. So I'm always going to leave myself scratching my head about, you know, who's going to go to the Clippers on purpose, but that's just my personal bias. I could babble all day on this, but as far as the Kyrie move, Shane, I'm gonna hit you with that one. As far as Kyrie and the choice that he made, are you with him? You for it, against it? How do you feel about the decision that Kyrie made? Was that today or was that yesterday? I feel like that was earlier today, wasn't it?
I think it was like 2 days ago. I think it might have been Monday.
Okay.
Oh, but I think it was a good move for him. I mean, the market for him was very, very shallow. Like there were a few teams that kicked the tires on it, but I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, he's with all his talent, greatest ball handler the game's ever seen. I'm willing to say that. Like his talent is unquestioned. It's the between the ears, it's the mindset and everything else. I mean, he's often injured. And then when he was healthy, I mean, you had the whole fiasco with, you know, him not being available, not getting vaccinated, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's his choice. But I mean, you know, it's just he's kind of flaky. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get. And I think if you're going to be investing that kind of money in a guy, you need to know, like, okay, I can count on this dude. He's not about to just bail. I think him choosing to run it back, I think it's a bit of he could have taken a massive pay cut, and I wouldn't have done it. It's $36 million. If somebody's going to be paying you that and you have a chance to opt in, unless you plan on taking a discount, maybe not a substantial one, but unless you're trying to, you know, help the team out and give them some flexibility, I wouldn't take a $30 million pay cut for anybody. I think him running it back, the chance of them getting Ben Simmons back, playing basketball and possibly helping them. There's a lot to him going back to Brooklyn actually kind of keeps them in the conversation. Because I think him being there, KD being there, Simmons, you know, a healthy Joe Harris, I think that's big.
People adore Joe Harris.
I think their ceiling now with those guys in the fold, they can still be a finals team. They could still be the team that makes a deep run. The
Nick
floor,
Claxton.
that I'm sorry.
Nah, I said Nick Claxton. Yeah,
Yeah, Nick
that's
Claxton,
another one. Yeah, I
all
feel
those
like
guys. I
I
mean,
feel like he goes very far under the radar sometimes.
absolutely. I mean, he's a young dude that wants to see the floor. I think their ceiling is they can get to the finals. They could be an Eastern Conference finalist team. Their floor is they end up the same way they were this year, because of injuries, guys maybe not playing well. If KD gets injured, anything like that, I think that their floor is them being as good as they were this year, where it's still people in and out of the lineup. You're not sure what you're going to get from guys. And then, I mean, there's other questions. I mean, you have Steve Nash. It'll be year 2 for him. So I think
Mm-hmm.
he's going to try to put more of his imprint on the team. I don't know if that imprint will involve defense whatsoever, but I love my guy Steve.
Well, I
He's one of
mean,
my favorite players ever.
well, I mean, he did play under D'Antoni, so that's not that's not a very loving sign when it comes to the defensive end.
Yeah, but I mean, I like I said, I think Kyrie going back there definitely keeps them in contention. I think had he left, you would have a lot more questions in Brooklyn. Does KD stay? Does he request a trade? We had people posturing, looking at you, Dame, about coming to Portland and team up. I'm like, well, I think it should be the other way around. I think KD would have had to be the one posting to Instagram saying, hey, why don't you come to Brooklyn? I
Agreed.
would rather stay in Brooklyn and have Dame come to me than to go all the way across the country to play for a smaller market team. Like, I
Agreed.
think Dame joining KD would have been a better call than KD leaving to go play in Portland, but that's just me.
No, I totally agree. I 100% agree. I don't think there is any benefit at this point for a guy like Durant to go, like you said, to a smaller market. And that's something else that we can touch on a later episode as well. But like I said, as big of a fan as I am of Dame, I you're gonna have to wise up. You're gonna something has to happen. That
Probably not going to happen in Portland. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, it's like we were talking about this earlier. I mean, we were talking about Bradley Beal opting out with Washington.
Yep.
Like that situation, either it's a weird situation because we were talking about this before the pod. Like
Opting out is the worst possible thing that he could have done.
like him opting in, if he opts in, it's like, okay, yeah, get paid. Like he's been the face of the franchise the last few years. Like, okay, cool, I get that. Now, if him opting out, he can still re-sign with Washington
For less money now because it'll be for a longer deal.
but it's like, yeah, it's either for flexibility or he's going to switch teams. Now, I'm not a proponent of, if I'm playing in a place where not many people really want to play in the first place. I don't know if I want to
Right.
give a pay cut on a team that's basically like basketball Siberia. Like people
And
like
they are
veterans
one of
end
them
up in
now.
nobody goes to Washington on purpose. Like that just doesn't happen. You get traded there, or
It's
like
it's
they
funny because
add you
it's
in
true.
training camp.
It's funny because it's true.
Ish Smith played there more than once. And I don't even think he was. He was probably just looking to stick in the league. I don't know if he necessarily chose Washington either. So
He didn't choose anywhere.
he just kind of meandered about, and they were like, "Hey, you want to hoop?"
He's like, look, he's like, I'm in the league. Y'all want me to play where? I bet.
He's basically that dude. Like he doesn't necessarily pick a team, but he's like there if you want to run fives. So he's like that dude that's just always got his sneakers. So like that's him. That's Ish Smith. So like, but going back on it, I don't want to get too off topic. Like Beal opting out, either he takes less money and stays with Washington, which I don't think is a good move,
Not at
or
all.
he tries to go somewhere else. And I think him going somewhere else would be better. I mean, because I mean he doesn't have. I mean they got Kristaps Porzingis there. They got a few guys in Washington, but let's be real, they're not contending there. And
Yeah.
either he wants to go the Dirk Nowitzki route and he wants to be that guy for Washington. I just don't. If you really want to win, I think you got to get out. I think it's the same way with Dame in Portland. It's like he's about to take a 2-year extension worth $100 million. Like at some point,
Dumb.
you got to put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to say, okay, I'm willing, I want to win, but I want to do it here. If the team isn't like making moves that are setting you up to win now, you're just wasting your prime. So, with Brad Beal, it's the same deal. It's like dude's been averaging 25 or whatever, and he's playing on these teams that aren't even like sniffing the playoffs. So
if I'm Brad Beal, what I do is I opt in and I demand a trade. That way I get my money and I can still go somewhere. And even on the team's side of that, now that you've given me this money, you're going to get that value back. So to me, it just makes the most sense to opt in. It's like now if you opt out, now you're basically at the whim of what any other team is willing to pay you. And if they see that this team wanted to give you this and you turned it down, I'm sitting in the front office like, what am I going to give it to you for? Why should I? So I just feel like he put himself in a really bad position there. I gotta throw something really funny at you though, Shane, that I just realized the other day. And of course, college play is involved in all of this, but there was at some point I was listening to the radio and I heard the folks on the radio talking about Brad Beal, and Malcolm Brogdon came into the conversation. Now, the funniest thing, and it just totally threw me off because, of course, college experience. These dudes were drafted 4 years like 4 years apart from each other. Do you know that Bradley Beal and Malcolm Brogdon are the same age?
You're kidding, right?
I'm dead serious. They are both 29 years old.
Sheesh, man. That means that Bradley Beal came out of Florida, after a couple years, maybe?
Yeah. Bro, my mind was blown when I heard on the radio that the two of them were the same age. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, Bradley Beal, like at this point, it feels like Bradley Beal's been in the league for at least like 15 years. Like it feels like
it's crazy. Like, yeah, it feels like he's been in the league forever.
Yeah.
He played with John Wall, which it's like we just touched on John Wall. It's like John Wall feels like he's been in the league forever, and he played with Beal, and Beal feels like he's been in the league like a 15-year veteran by this point. So like that's pretty wild, man. But like
mind blown, bro. I was like, what is really going on right now?
Yeah, man. I think just one more thing with the Beal thing. He'll have no shortage of suitors. I think he'll be willing to take less money, not too much.
At this point, he doesn't have a choice. As soon as he opted out, he doesn't have a choice now.
Yeah, he can still get paid. It's like we'll get to Jalen Brunson in a minute, but it's like he's in a situation where he can kind of control his destiny. If he takes a pay cut and stays in Washington, I think to me that's a worse move than just him opting out. I mean, if he opts in, cool, because that means you're locked up or whatever. But him opting out, either you're going to give them financial flexibility, or there's still a sign and trade possibility. You just be signing for less. I think he should bail. Now,
agreed.
Because if he opts in, that probably eliminates the sign and trade. Him opting out probably opens up a sign and trade opportunity, because it's going to be different money, but you'll have a team that would probably be willing to give up some assets to get him. So I would like to see him on a team that is actually worth a damn. If he stayed in Washington, if they were able to acquire some role players, maybe they could do something, but they're not close to contending in the East, with the roster they have. So hopefully whatever he decides to do or whatever happens is good for him, because Brad Beal's like one of the best dudes in the NBA. I think him in a good situation is what he deserves. Now, we talked about his former running mate, John Wall. Now, 31 years old, hasn't played in an NBA game since April 23rd of 2021. Now, he's only played 40 games since the 2018-19 season. He missed all of the 19-20 season with injury, and he missed all of this past season because Houston said, "Stay home. We don't want you, affecting our chances to get a draft pick." So that happened, and now he's got an opportunity to go to the Clippers, who last year overachieved with the roster they had. They had a lot of injuries. PG missed a lot of time. They missed Kawhi for the whole year. Right. Shout out to Tyronn Lue for pulling out one of the best coaching jobs in the NBA last season to get the Clippers in somewhat of a playoff conversation.
Former Laker, I love him.
Shout out to him. So I think if John Wall is healthy, this is a guy that has two-way potential. Now, he's one of the fastest players in the league. It'll be interesting to see how he is after an Achilles and subsequent just, collecting dust on the shelf. I think Kawhi will be back. PG will be back healthy. John Wall, if he's healthy, I think he's the perfect point guard for that system. I think and how they want to play. I think they've tried to plug guys in, Pat Bev, Rondo, Reggie Jackson. Like, they've tried to plug in different guys in that role. John Wall, no disrespect to those guys, but if that dude's healthy, he's far and away the best player they could put at that position. And he's a guy that can set the table for everybody. He's a guy that can get his own. He's the fastest player I've ever seen live. The first time I saw Dirk Nowitzki play, it was against Washington. And this was probably the 2012 season, and fastest player I've ever seen. He literally went between legs with a crossover and was like dunking like in a blink of an eye. And I knew I wasn't tripping, because everybody sitting around us at that game were like, "Wait, did we just see that in real time?" Like, we were just looking at each other like, he legit was just going between his legs for a crossover, and then he was at the rim trying to dunk. Like, that's the kind of player John Wall is. And he's had injuries. He's 31, but he's been out of the game. So if he's able to come back and look like John Wall, the Clippers are scary. They were scary without him.
Look, I have to throw something in, not to shade John Wall at all, but I have to quickly go back to the Brad Beal and Malcolm Brogdon thing I was talking about earlier, dude. You ready for this?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Look, I quickly went and looked it up just to make sure that I wasn't crazy. Check this out. Not only are they the same age, Bradley Beal just turned 29 on June 28th. Malcolm Brogdon is actually older.
I'm a rookie of the year, Malcolm Brogdon.
Rookie of the year, Malcolm Brogdon is actually the older of the two, even though he didn't even come into the league until 2016.
See, and this also is something that he should work into his future presidential campaign, because he definitely.
I'm telling you,
they don't call him the president for nothing. I think he should run for office after the NBA. I mean, he's almost presidential eligible. What, 6 more years?
Doesn't take much longer. Yeah, because you only got to be 35.
Yeah, so hopefully if we don't go to hell in the handbasket before then he might get a shot. I don't know.
Too late. Oh, sorry.
But in talking with guys opting in, getting bought out, going places. A hot button issue is probably the most talked about thing in free agency right now is the Knicks' pursuit of Dallas Mavericks guard Jalen Brunson. Now,
I'm gonna let you take this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, so right now, Jalen Brunson, the news that's come out this week, Jalen Brunson looks like he will be heading to the New York Knicks when free agency begins July 1st. Now,
6 p.m.
yeah, so, Jalen, here's the situation as far as I understand it with JB and the Mavs. So, Dallas could have offered him a 4-year, $55 million extension. Now, this is the same extension they gave Dorian Finney-Smith during the season. But with JB, I think it was one of those deals where he was up for the extension. They didn't offer it. I think they wanted to see, after JB struggled against the Clippers in the previous postseason, I think they needed to see more from him before they were ready to commit. But I think they were kind of not all in on him. I think they still weren't sold. And so they didn't offer him the extension. They kind of, let him play it out. And then the trade deadline comes, and I'm sure he was shocked to see.
Random quick one for you. I don't know. I think this might be the first year they've done it. Free agency actually does not start on July 1st. They flipped it, and it starts technically today, since it's after midnight, of course. It starts June 30th. It starts at 6 p.m. today on June 30th. They're not waiting until July 1st anymore.
Okay, cool. So we're about to find out if he actually will sign with New York or maybe another team. I've been hearing Miami has put out feelers for him as well. But, just going back to what I was saying about JB, like, they didn't offer him the extension. He kind of was shopped around the deadline, see if they could add another star. We know what Dallas did. They traded Kristaps Porzingis for Spencer Dinwiddie, Davis Bertans, and some other stuff. And in JB stayed. I mean, when the COVID outbreak hit the league, like he carried Mavericks. I mean, he averaged 16 points, almost 5 assists, almost 4 rebounds this year. Shot 50% from the floor, 37% from the 3-point line, 84% from the foul line.
Postseason dude was a monster.
He started all 18 of the playoff games for the Mavericks. He averaged 21.6 points per game, almost 5 rebounds, almost 4 assists. All but one game. So 17 of the 18 games he played in the postseason for Dallas, he had double figures in those games. And when I say that this dude proved his worth, during the season from December 1st to January 17th, he had double figures in 25 straight games. So Jalen Brunson, what I've learned about him ever since day one, like, he was a winner in college, former National Player of the Year, 2-time national champion at Villanova. Like, even though he was older than some of the dudes in his class, he's already 25 now, and it's his 4th year. His thing is he's always won. He's always found a way. He's always been that guy that's been a steady hand. He was a steady hand in college, and he won a lot, and he's been a positive influence on the Mavericks. I think his ability to just be a winner and just be rock solid is one of the reasons that we're talking about him today in this conversation. So he broke out this year. He finally broke into the starting lineup in December. Once Tim Hardaway Jr. got hurt, he stepped into a bigger role and he performed. And Dallas kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit. They didn't offer him the extension when they could have. I think given how he was playing, he was right to maybe say, no, I want to kind of bet on myself and prove myself. And he definitely earned more than the 4 years and 55. I mean, that's a nice deal. But New York was hot on him during the trade season, and they're hot on him now. They're willing to offer him, 4 years and 100 or 110. I'm hearing even. And Dallas, I think, came out today. They're going to make a 5-year deal to him, similar to what Fred VanVleet got, around $85 million. I think they have a number in mind that they're willing to throw out there to try and retain him. But all signs are pointing to him going to New York, and who's cleared a lot of cap space to get him. So, with Jalen, man, I, as a fan of the Mavericks and a fan of his, man, I understand it's a business. I'm not going to be like some fans I've seen where they're already trashing him for wanting to go to New York. But look, there's the plus side for him if he does go to New York. is he won't have to share the ball as much as far as the playmaking duties. He can be the primary playmaker.
He's primary off top.
And he doesn't have to be secondary to Luka, which, given how Luka plays, he has the ball in his hands a lot. His usage rate is really high. Like, you're going to have to understand, like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna be camping out in the corner a lot. Jalen still performed well because he's a winner. I think him going to New York can help change the culture there because he's a winning player. I think he'll ball out for New York if he goes there. But it's a bigger opportunity. His dad just joined Tom Thibodeau's staff. He has a connection with Derrick Rose as a guy there. The GM, I think, for the Knicks, Leon Rose, was his agent when he came into the league, and his dad was the first player that Leon Rose represented. So those connections can't be understated. Like, you look at that, like, that connection there, that continuity with the guys that are there. I think a bigger role for him and an opportunity to establish himself as one of the best young guards in the league. I think that's what New York can offer him. Now, if he stays with Dallas has a lot to offer there as well. They can say, look, we broke out, we made the Western Conference Finals, we're close, and we want you in the fold. That can be their pitch. But I think at the end of the day, it's Jalen Brunson. And the thing is with him, it's like he's a 6'1" guard. I think what makes him so attractive is, like I said, he's rock solid. His shooting percentages are phenomenal. And as a 6'1" guard who doesn't rely heavily on athleticism, if you can go out and shoot 50% from the floor, and you've done that multiple times already in your career, and you're not a high turnover guy, like, that's a winning player. And there's not too many 6'1" guards that can shoot 50% from the floor. That's just it. And I think New York is smart to go after him, but they've cleared a lot of space. They better be sure that, that this is the guy that they want for sure.
No, but the thing when it comes to New York and Jalen is that New York right now doesn't have anything to lose. They're already in a position where they don't, I feel like they don't even know what they're gunning for. Like, they don't know exactly what they want. They've already been shopping Julius Randle for the last 2 seasons after you convince him to take a pay cut. So you don't even believe that he can be that guy. RJ Barrett, as talented as he is, you haven't done anything to convince him that he's going to be that guy. And I think that the best thing about all of this, and why I absolutely believe that in a few hours we will be getting breaking news from either Shams or Woj that Jalen Brunson is going to New York. The reason I believe it is simply timing. There's Jalen Brunson a year ago, just like you said, he was gunning for the money. They wanted to give him an extension for $4 and $55. He gambled on himself. And you look at what he did in the postseason this year, especially what he did when Luka went down. He earned more money, and Dallas is willing to give him the money, which is respectable, but New York is willing to give him more. And like you said, with all of these connections that he has to New York, including, I believe they said at one point that his dad actually played under Thibodeau when Thibodeau was an assistant coach. I think it was I can't remember where it was, but
probably Chicago or somewhere.
I believe it was Chicago. I think you're right. But it just, all these connections now, and we kind of talked about this earlier today. It's like, after a while, some of these players, of course, everybody comes to the NBA wanting a title, but a lot of them also want the legacy. And I think that the way that this story is being written right now for Jalen Brunson, it is absolutely perfect for him. He gets to go home. He gets to be with his dad. He gets to be with his family. He gets to play for a coach that's already familiar with his father, and the father is an assistant coach under the guy. Like, everything is going into this. And on top of that, I can occasionally go and pick up a shovel and carry $110 million to the bank. I mean, it works out every possible way for him. And you bring him into this situation where you're like, hey, we're going to make you the guy. So not only am I getting paid to be in this situation, you're also still putting that responsibility on me to where now I have even more of a role. It's like in Dallas, granted, he was in a position, okay, Luka's out, you have to carry us. He's never been in a position where it's like, hey, welcome to New York. This is you now. So I think that's something that might also come across as a challenge for NBA players now. And I think that's something that can also carry him, that paycheck combined with being like, hey, now you're in this spot where this is you. You don't have a position to fall back once somebody else comes back and takes some of the pressure off you. No, this is you now. So I'm really anxious to see what happens. But at the end of the day, I really believe that, like they say, free agency opens at 6 p.m. today. 6 o'clock and about 37 seconds, we're going to get that alert from Woj and ESPN that he's agreeing to go to New York.
And I'm not going to knock a guy for wanting more for himself. And this is a situation with the Knicks where it's nothing new for him. I mean, let's be honest. The dude was a stud in high school. He was a stud in college. And he's proven to be a steady hand in the NBA and a productive player in the NBA. So him getting a chance to run a team is nothing new. I think him having a situation where he gets the keys, I think he's proven that he can handle that. And I want to see what he does I'm going to see if he can run the show as the playmaker. Dallas is in a situation where, they've been under the cap and they could go over the cap to sign him. But you also have to understand, and a lot of people I think do understand this, is Jalen Brunson really worth $30 million a year? Like, is he in that same class as a Kyrie Irving or a James Harden or like Steph Curry and all that? Like, is he a max player? And I think for Dallas, he can't be that guy. It's unfortunate. I would love to keep him in the fold, but him being there and being the Robin to Luka's Batman, like it's attractive, and you can sell him on the winning, which that's not hard because all Jalen Brunson has done is win. So him going to New York, he gets a chance, if he indeed goes there, he gets a chance to run the show and bring a winning mentality at the point guard position. And that's something that they have struggled mightily to fill for the last, I don't know, probably since Mark Jackson.
Yeah. No, and it's funny you say, I mean, when we talk about max players, it's another thing that I had brought up a while ago. I think it was earlier today. When it comes to max players, it's like the one thing that determines a max player is having a team that's willing to pay you max money. So the fact that maybe Dallas doesn't want to give him 4 years and 110 doesn't mean that he's not a max player. The
Can
same
be max
way,
for somebody, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. As long as you're max for somebody, you're a max player. Anybody that garners a max contract is a max player. If I don't get it with the team where I'm sitting right now, so be it. But again, going back to, kudos for him. If I end up getting it somewhere else, then I'm still, at the end of the day, I'm still a max player in the National Basketball Association. So it doesn't matter where I get it. If I get it, it is what it is. And it could even come down to where it's a head scratching thing where like the former team is, thinking what might have happened, because I feel like even though I don't think that the Knicks are very savvy right now when it comes to making any sort of conscious decisions whatsoever. I don't think they're finished. So I think that spending this kind of money on Jalen Brunson, I think it's only the beginning. There's something else that's going to happen in New York. There's something else that's going to happen at Madison. I think we're going to see some other changes. And there's going to be something else to where once the season starts this fall, we're actually going to be looking at New York and we're not going to be laughing.
And I think in order to get something, you got to give up something. And they were willing to say, look, Nerlens Noel, whoever, look, see you. We want to open up some cap space and we want to be aggressive. I think for them, it's a calculated move. They've wanted Jalen Brunson for a while. I think Detroit was also in that, which is funny because Detroit ended up didn't they get Nerlens in the deal? So Detroit was somehow connected to this, and they're about to help facilitate this move for Jalen if he indeed goes there. And kudos to them for being aggressive and going after a player that they like. It's not a situation where they get draft picks and then they don't develop anybody, and then they make a bunch of mismatched acquisitions that don't accentuate the talents they already have. Last year's team, they were a tough defensive team. They didn't have a whole lot of offensive punch. Adding Jalen Brunson not only gives you a guy that's capable of scoring 20 a game, but he gives you a steady hand and a calming presence at the point guard position. They need that desperately. Derrick Rose being there, I think they may have with Jalen Brunson and Derrick Rose, if D Rose is there, that's a nice 1-2 for the point guard spot. And if you're Dallas, you're in a position now where, yeah, you might have screwed yourself a little bit by not locking him up. But if you look at Dallas, they have the ability to make up for him leaving, because they'll have Spencer Dinwiddie coming off, a healthy offseason where he's not coming off an ACL injury. So I think he'll be better. He really helped them and was a key part in their run this year. Tim Hardaway Jr. will be back. That'll help make up for some of the stuff. I mean, he was benched in favor of Jalen Brunson. So those guys, I hear that they're looking to add Goran Dragic. Christian Wood is there now. So you can make up for the offensive things. Dragic will if they lock up Dragic, he'll give them some experience that they sorely lacked. And Dinwiddie can probably step into Brunson's role just as well and they do a lot of the same things. So, and he's a bigger guard. I think Dallas definitely wanted to get bigger. So him leaving, I think he might have been the shortest guy in their rotation at 6'1". So everybody else is 6'4" and taller, 6'5" and taller. So for Dallas, even though losing him sucks, it's a business, and they have the personnel finally where they can say, well, him leaving won't kill us. We can actually move some stuff around and make up for that. And for New York, you get a player that you've coveted. So with that being said, I mean, that's pretty much all we've touched on. I think we still got the rest of free agency. We got to talk about coaches coming up.
We'll save that. Yeah, we've gotten kind of long. We'll save that. We don't want to we don't want to wear them out, but yeah, we can hold the coaches off until the next one.
We got a lot more to talk about. I'm looking forward to it just because I love free agency season. I love to see where everybody's going to end up, who makes what moves.
Definitely.
So far we've gotten all this news and I think we've touched on all of it.
And I mean, this is, and I mean, the crazy thing is this is all the news that we've covered. And I mean, I haven't even looked at the clock yet, but I'm sure we've gone over an hour. But just everything we've talked about so far is even before free agency officially starts. So the next time we touch these mics, it's gonna be crazy.
Buckle up, because it's about to get wild.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's so much more ahead that
oh yeah.
we are looking forward to breaking down for you guys. So
Yeah.
you know the deal. If you've made it this far, and you guys, we really appreciate you. Thank you for listening to us. You can find us on Spotify and Anchor at the JWJ Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at the JWJ Podcast. You can also like us on Facebook at the JWJ Podcast. If you'd like to follow us personally, you can follow James at Titletown's Mayor. That's TitletownzMayor. You can follow me, the Mayor, Mr. Washington. You can follow me on at It's a Thomas Thing. You can follow me there on Instagram and on Twitter. So again, if you guys made it this far, thank you for listening to the JWJ Podcast. James, send us on out of here, man.
Listen, check it out. If you're still listening, like my boy said, we love you. We appreciate you. So thank you for another successful episode. We genuinely appreciate you. We thank all of you. And we are very thankful that you tuned in to JWJ.